Welcome back to the OrtoTech Garage. My name is Keith. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about brake fluid. I know I get a lot of questions about how often should I flush my fluid, when do I flush my fluid, why do I have to flush my fluid. I just want to take 2 seconds and just kind of run down a couple things with you. So brake fluid does need to be exchanged from time to time. And the reason for that is mainly because brake fluid is hygroscopic. That just means it absorbs moisture. That's what it's supposed to do. If you get moisture in your brake fluid too much, content over about 3% is usually indicative that you need to replace the brake fluid. The safer bet for you is just to get it on a regular routine maintenance. A lot of times when we're doing brakes, it's just a smart time to go ahead and bleed and flush the fluid as well, exchange all that fluid and get some new stuff in there. If the moisture content is too high, there's a possibility if you get the brakes hot that you could boil the fluid. And the problem with that is brake fluid is designed not to be compressible. And if you boil the fluid and you get air pockets in it, your brake pedal gets spongy. You get some brake fade where you kind of pedal sinks to the floor, and those things become dangerous, obviously, when you're trying to get the vehicle stopped. So we want to make sure that your brake fluid is clear of all that stuff. Any contaminants that come in there, a lot of times you see some brown or black material start to form inside the brake fluid. Some of that is moisture and contamination. Some of it, maybe the carbon coming off the inside of the brake hoses and things. So it's normal to get some of that material build up in the brake fluid over time. We want to get that out. Another important reason for doing a brake fluid flush is because all the vehicles now have anti-lock brake components in it, traction control systems, and all those things that run through the brake system. So a lot of those components have very small valving, very small orifices inside the expensive electronic brake control units and things. We want to make sure that none of that debris that's accumulating in the system gets caught up in any of that. If something gets stuck in there and you have to replace those components, it gets quite costly. So simple maintenance goes a long way. I'm a big believer of that and a big fan of that. So in this channel, you're going to see me doing a lot of these maintenance things for you because it's really important you get those taken care of. Let's get out in the garage and get after it. I've got here some tools I think we're going to need in order to perform this task on this Chevy Silverado. Some of the tools you need for your particular vehicle might be a little bit different, socket sizes and wrench sizes, but generally speaking, this stuff should work for you. I also wanted to let you know that you may not have to take the wheels off your car to perform this task. You might be able to reach up inside and reach the bleeder screws. Obviously, it's easier with the wheels off, but however you want to handle that is your business. Just let you know it's an option for you to not take the wheels off. I also have here an electric impact. Not totally necessary to take your wheels off. You can certainly do that by hand. Okay, now we've gone over that. I wanted to talk about this bleeding tool here. There are a couple of different methods to bleed brakes. There's not necessarily one method. You could have a fancy pressure bleeder that attaches to the master cylinder. You certainly won't have that at home, I don't think. You could have a tool like this that's a vacuum bleeder. This bleeder is very inexpensive on Amazon or any internet source you can find. This is the method we're going to use today because I think it's very accessible to all of you. I'm assuming you have an air compressor in your garage at home somewhere. If you don't have an air compressor, this method is also off the table for you. So last choice for you, if you don't have an air compressor or you don't want to buy this tool from Amazon, you're going to do it the old-fashioned way. You're going to have help. You're going to need somebody to come in and pump the brake pedal for you, and then they're going to pump it up and hold the pedal down. You'll release the brake bleeder screw and let some fluid come out, lock it up, and then they can ease off the pedal and pump it again. You'll continue that process at all the wheels until you've got all the clean fluid at all the wheels. So a little bit more labor intense, but it'll get the job done either way. Some of the other tools we're going to use here are torque wrenches. I've got a 1/4 inch drive torque wrench so we can torque the bleeder screws. I've got a 1/2 inch drive to torque the wheels after we put them back on. I also have a little razor knife so we can open the seal on the brake fluid. And for us, we just need this 10mm open end and box end wrench, or a combination wrench is what it's called. Some of the other tools I'll be showing you in this video are these brake fluid tester and some test strips. And of course, I would recommend you wear some rubber gloves, have a couple of rags handy. This should get you down the road. I did want to mention too about the brake bleeding. If you have yourself an old water bottle like this, a Gatorade bottle even, you can drill a hole in the cap and you can stuff your hose in there. It just makes the job a lot neater. You're not squirting fluid into a bucket or dripping all over the place. This will capture it for you pretty well and keep you tidy while you're working. I've got a few things set up for you I wanted to talk about before we actually start working on this vehicle. One of them obviously is going to be brake fluid. There's a lot of choices for brake fluid, and I want to make sure you guys are using the right product in your vehicle. On your brake fluid reservoir cap, it should label on there whether it takes a .3, a .4, .5, .5.1. There's several different fluids you can use. The majority of vehicles that you're going to see on the road today, probably including yours, just require a .3 brake fluid. You can use a .3 or a .4. I've got both here. .4 you can use in place of .3. It just has a lower boiling point. It's a little bit better fluid, I guess you could say, and no problem putting .4 in a .3 system, but don't put .3 in a .4 system. So don't do it backwards. .5 systems you're rarely going to see. There's no ability to trap moisture in that fluid, and it's just not used on production cars. So just ignore that. Don't ever buy .5 unless your vehicle absolutely calls for it. It's silicone based, and you're just not going to see that in a production vehicle. Make sure you're using the right fluid. Check your owner's manual if you really need to do that. It should say on top of the cap. Buy plenty of fluid. We're going to be bleeding these brakes and getting a lot of fluid out of here. It holds quite a bit, and also in addition to holding quite a bit, we got to push a lot through in order to get everything clean and fully exchange this fluid. So make sure you have at least 3 of these big bottles here of fluid. I would say probably minimum. The last thing you want to do is run out of fluid and you need to drive this car to the parts store to get some more brake fluid, and that's going to present a problem for you. So don't run out of fluid. Let's make sure you have enough to complete this job and get you back on the road safely. Another thing I wanted to talk about in this video is why we're performing this service. Everybody's always asking, how often do I have to do a brake fluid flush? Why are we doing a brake fluid flush? First off, I want to explain brake fluid is hygroscopic. That just means it absorbs moisture. That's what it's supposed to do. So any humidity in the atmosphere that works its way into the brake fluid, it will absorb that. When the moisture content gets too high, generally over 3%, that's considered above the limit of how much water or moisture that we want to have in the brake fluid. So I've got a little tester here. There's some things you can use if you really want to test your brake fluid. This is a moisture meter here. You can get one of these off Amazon, pretty inexpensive, something like it. I could put some links down below if you're really interested in doing this type of test. It's not really necessary though for production cars, your everyday driver. You dip that in there and it's going to show you what the moisture content is. That doesn't tell the whole story. Looking at the master cylinder tells you a little bit too. This one is starting to get pretty dirty. This brake fluid, you're going to notice, is clear from the bottle, and as time goes on, it's going to go from clear to a yellow color, from yellow to brown, and brown to black. If you're in the black range for certain, just change the fluid. You don't need to bother testing the moisture content. Same thing, probably in the brown range. I would just recommend doing it. If you're putting your car on a regular routine maintenance for brake fluid, I would tell you every 2 to 3 years maximum, you should be bleeding and flushing the brake system. Get some new fluid in there. It's going to build up some contamination over time. Not only just moisture, but there's other materials you're going to find that start to accumulate within the brake fluid. Copper, some carbon buildup from inside the brake hoses and things. It's going to start getting dirty, and we want to get that stuff out of there. Most modern vehicles have anti-lock brake systems on them. The components inside the anti-lock brake system are very expensive. If you need an electronic brake control module for a vehicle like this, it could cost you thousands. So a little bit of debris in the system could work its way into some of the very small passages and orifices within these components. If something gets stuck in there, lodged in there, and the system can't function properly, it's going to cost a lot of money to replace those parts. This is, again, if you guys watch my other videos, I talk about cheap insurance. Doing some simple maintenance is cheap insurance. Put some brake fluid through the system, get it flushed out, get it clean. We don't have to worry about moisture and dirt and contamination and debris, and you won't have to worry about replacing those parts. The service life is going to be greatly extended on those things. So this is why we replace the brake fluid every 2 to 3 years. If you're doing a brake job on your vehicle, that's a great time to replace the brake fluid. You're already in there doing some work anyway. You got the calipers exposed. You're moving fluid around anyway. Just service the fluid, get it over with, and you can relax for a couple of years and know when you have a nice brake system that's working well, it's been cleaned out, and it's safe to operate. One more thing we want to do is we want to get this master cylinder cleaned off. A lot of times, especially a vehicle that's kind of got some miles on it, it's going to have a lot of dirt and debris and stuff on top of the reservoir. The last thing you want to do is open the cap and introduce dirt into the system that wasn't there before. Kind of defeats the purpose of flushing this fluid out. So I've got some brake cleaner we're going to use to spray off the top of the reservoir here, and then I want to wipe it with a rag. We're going to demonstrate that here for you. So if you got yourself a little bit of brake cleaner, just want to spray this area off around. I like to actually clean the whole master cylinder off. A lot of times there's going to be all kinds of buildup and stuff around this thing. It just looks gross. I'm kind of a neat freak, so let's get it cleaned up real quick. We'll wipe it off before we open the cap, and then we'll move on to the next step. Go ahead and wipe underneath, especially right around the cap before we take that off, and get all that debris off of there. Whatever might be lingering around there. Wipe the top of the cap off. And then when we open this cap, do it gently. We don't want to knock any more debris in there. I like to wipe off the rubber seal that's on here. Make sure we're getting any debris off of there. I come in around the side of this and try to get anything off that's still on the outside without knocking it back into the reservoir. I'm just coming around the back, and that should get us set up pretty well to do this job. Make sure you put your cap where you're not going to knock it down in the engine bay and lose it. We definitely need to put that back on when we're done. This next step is not absolutely necessary. This is just something that I do in the garage for sake of speed and efficiency. I like to remove as much fluid from this reservoir before I even get started. The whole idea here is we're trying to exchange all this fluid. We want it to be as clean as possible and remove as much as possible of the old fluid. So I usually just start out here. I've got a little vacuum tool here. It's actually just a hand pump tool. It's not really necessary, like I said, but I like to suck out as much fluid as I can on these systems and start with fresh fluid in the reservoir if I can. This is not always possible. It's certainly not possible to evacuate 100%, nor would I recommend you do that. I like to keep a little bit of fluid covering the bottom ports of the master cylinder. This way we're not introducing any air anywhere for any reason. So, but I would love to get as much as I can out of this reservoir now. Fill it up with some clean fluid. This way we've got a fresh start here. It just saves a little time. We're not bleeding at each wheel for eternity. Let's do that. So like I said, this is just a hand pump system. Let's see how much fluid we can get out of there. Sometimes when you're doing these cars, depending on the vehicle you're working on, there's going to be a little screen that sits inside the opening, so you're not going to be able to get down more than an inch or so. Even on those cars, I like to take a little screwdriver and just kind of pick it out of there. I get that cleaned up anyway. That screen could have a little bit of debris on it from, over time. So if you can get that screen out, it'll help you get a little bit lower into the master cylinder if you're going to suck some fluid out. And it'll also give you the opportunity to clean that little screen up and make sure you reinstall it when you're done. This vehicle does not have that, so you don't have to worry about it on this model. Now that I've recovered as much of the old fluid from this reservoir as I can without going too low, I don't want to cover the ports at the bottom of the reservoir again. It's really important that you guys are using fresh, unopened .3 brake fluid or .4 brake fluid. You want to make sure this doesn't already have moisture in it. It kind of defeats the purpose of doing the service on here. If you've got some old stuff laying around in the house, just discard it and go buy yourself some new one. You want to make sure the container is sealed before you use it. If you have an open container that you just used last week, by all means, go ahead and use that, as long as the cap was on it tightly. But otherwise, safest bet is to get yourself a brand new one. Let's cut this open and top up this reservoir. When you're doing this, try to pour it slowly. You don't want to spill a bunch of fluid. The brake fluid is very caustic. Wherever you spill it, it's going to eat up a bunch of paint and stuff. So if you spill some, just get it cleaned off pretty quickly. You can use some of that brake cleaner. Water does a great job of breaking it down, but I don't recommend using any water around an open master cylinder like this. We don't want to introduce any more moisture. If you get any of this on your paint, you spill a little bit, get it off immediately. This will destroy your paint job in quick order. So let's make sure you got maybe a wet rag laying around, and if you do spill some, you want to get that cleaned up as quick as you can. All right, guys, we're ready to get underneath to the wheels and start some bleeding here. We're here at the back of the car. We're starting on the passenger side rear, the right rear of the vehicle. We're going to work our way from the right rear to the left rear, and then left rear to the right front to the left front, and then we're going to wrap it up. This procedure is pretty much identical at every single wheel. We're going to hook up the brake bleeder. We're going to fire up the air hose so it starts sucking. Then we're going to open the bleeder screw up about a turn and a half. You just want to make sure you've got good flow. Don't take it all the way out. And then we're going to let that evacuate for at least 60 to 90 seconds. We want to get a good amount of fluid in the reservoir on the tool. We want to make sure we've recovered enough fluid where it's coming clean at this caliper. Once we see it's coming clean through the hose, we've got plenty of fluid coming out of there, then we can go ahead and tighten up that bleeder screw while we have the evacuator running. Make sure we cap it off, and then we can turn the tool off. So we just want to make sure we don't create any air pockets in the wheel while we're using this particular tool. Our brake master cylinder is completely filled. We're going to remove this little cap from the bleeder screw. There's a rubber cap on it, and it's attached through a little harness that's on the bleeder screw itself. You'll find it at the top of the caliper. It should be somewhere on the top part of where this piston sits, because all the fluid is going to rise, all the air is going to rise to the top, I'm sorry. We're going to connect the hose of our tool here to this bleeder screw, and then we're going to turn on our air bleeder. This will get a little noisy, and we're going to try to get as much fluid as we can out of here, probably at least enough, whatever is held in this cylinder, plus what's going to be held in the lines that come all the way back. So this might take a good 30, 60 seconds We're not going to make you watch the whole thing, but we're going to activate this tool, and you'll see some of this fluid start to come out when we open this bleeder screw right here. So these are going to turn counterclockwise, and then be careful not to strip these. If you feel it's kind of tight, like this one's fairly loose, that's good. If it's a little too tight, use the box end on it of your wrench first and break it free, and then you can get up here with your hose on once it's loose. So guys, I just want to mention, it's not necessarily to take this bleeder screw out or open it 5 turns. Usually a half a turn to a turn is enough to get adequate fluid out of it. Let's continue. After you complete this process on each wheel, go back to your master cylinder reservoir, check your fluid level, top it up. At no point during this procedure do you want to run the master cylinder dry. Okay, it's just going to introduce a ton of air in the system. It's going to make it really hard for you to bleed the system out. We're trying to exchange the fluid right now. We're not necessarily trying to get air pockets out. So this process is a little bit simpler when you're not trying to get giant air cavities out of the system that are locked up in there. It's still a similar process, but it just creates more headache and a little bit longer to do. Make sure you're keeping the reservoir full. Check between every single wheel, and if you're on the wheel too long, you still have a possibility to run it dry depending on how large your master cylinder is. The vehicle we're working on has got a fairly large capacity. I know I can get at least 1 wheel, probably 2 done on each one, but we still check it in between and top it up. This way you're not running low. We've completed both rear wheels, starting in the right rear, moving to the left rear. Now we move to the right front. We're going to bleed this wheel out. I wanted to make mention that if your tool has filled up close to the maximum range, make sure you empty that out. It's a good opportunity to do that now. We'll dump this, get some room for some new fluid, and continue on. I want you guys to follow along closely with me. If you're working on a vehicle like this and you see something that looks like this, that's the like and subscribe button. Make sure you honk that horn for notifications. Stick with us so you get some more videos. Let's get back at it. I've emptied the accumulation reservoir on the tool. This way we can start fresh again for the front wheels, and we're about ready to bleed this wheel. Let me show you how it looks. Pull your rubber cap off. Check your bleeder screw. Make sure it's free. We'll hook this up. Turn on our bleeder. As soon as you notice the fluid is coming clear, that's a good indication you can turn the tool off. Make sure you get your cap tight before you turn off the vacuum source, and then put your cover back on your bleeder screw. This keeps them from seizing up or any dirt and debris getting inside the hole. Makes it easier to bleed next time. When you're done tightening your bleeder screw, go ahead and check it with your torque wrench. This particular vehicle is 89 inch-pounds. It's a 1/4 inch drive torque wrench. Replace your rubber cap on there, and just wanted to also show you what it might look like from your vantage point if you're working on the ground. Some of these bleeder screws are tucked back behind the backing plate, behind the brakes. A little bit hard to access, and that's why we filmed all this from underneath for you so you can get a good view of what's going on. This is the last wheel. It's the left front, or the driver's side front of the vehicle. We'll follow the same procedure here. Nothing's changed. Let's get some fluid out of here until it comes clean, and then we're going to wrap up this project. Now that we've concluded bleeding all 4 wheels in that sequence, it's time to do one more thing. I want you to check your fluid level right now. Make sure you got at least halfway full of fluid. I don't want to fill it just yet. What I need you to do is go inside the vehicle and pump that brake pedal up. While you're bleeding it, the pedal's going to get low and spongy. We don't want you driving away like that. So get inside the car, pump the brake pedal until it gets hard. It should be firm, hard, and not sink to the floor or any of those things. If you've got a good, firm, hard pedal, we're ready to go ahead and top up this brake fluid. We want to bring it right to the maximum level. And I probably should mention at some point that this is a great opportunity if you've got your wheels off to inspect those brake pads. I hope you would do that anyway, but if you've got some low brake pads, I'd recommend you just get that taken care of first and then come back and bleed and flush the fluid after you've got the brake pads installed. There are a couple other things I wanted to talk about. There's alternate methods to bleeding brakes. There are pressure bleeders out there. You could just do it the old-fashioned way. If you've got 2 people, you have somebody sit in the car, they can just pump that brake pedal and then hold it down. You can open the bleeder screw and let some fluid drain out, tighten the bleeder screw, and then let them release the pedal and pump it again a few times. If you're going to use that kind of method, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's just a little more time consuming, and it obviously involves some help. So go ahead and do that if you need to. Just make sure that you're holding that brake pedal down until you tighten the bleeder back up, because every time you let up on it, it's going to want to suck some air in. So make sure that bleeder screw is closed on there. There is not a lot else that you really need to be concerned of with a vehicle like this. If you're doing the manual method, follow the rest of the steps. You just won't have the air bleeding tool. And I wanted to mention also, there's a lot of vehicles out there that have different procedures than this. This is fairly straightforward. It doesn't get a whole lot easier than a vehicle like this, but it does get quite a bit more complicated. If you've got a vehicle with some anti-lock brake systems that have high pressure accumulators on them, if you have hybrid vehicle, some of those other cars, they require some lengthy processes. Some of them you might need to hook up a computerized scan tool in order to bleed the brakes. There's just a lot of different procedures for different cars. So I hope I've said this before, but always consult your owner's manual for one, and consult the service manual to find out what is the procedure. You don't want to go in there and start bleeding brakes on your car. If you've got these types of components, you're just going to make it worse. Just leave it alone. Let the experts handle it if that's the case. Take it somewhere and just pay them to perform the service for you. You'll be much safer that way. All right, guys, thanks for following along with that video on how to bleed and flush your brake fluid. I hope you learned a lot today in this video. I want to make sure you guys are safe out there. Please pump up that brake pedal before you ever drive away after you've done your brake fluid flush. You want to make sure the brake pads are fully seated and the pistons have been extended all the way out to the rotors. I don't want to leave without a brake pedal. I really appreciate you guys watching our contents here, our videos, and we're really trying to create some stuff that's interesting to you and useful to you. Fun to watch, and we want to hear from you down below. If there's some content you'd like us to create, we're going to take a look at those comments. If we get enough interest, we'll be putting some videos together for you on that particular subject. So please interact with us a little bit. And we've got some more great brake information coming up in a video over here, so you can check that out if this is in your line of interest. And just want to thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next video.